What could drive a retired Marine Corps veteran to become one of America's most notorious serial killers? How does a man, once disciplined by military service, spiral into the darkness that led to the deaths of 11 women? This is the story of Anthony Sowell, the man who would come to be known as the Cleveland Strangler. His crime shocked the nation and exposed the cracks in a system that failed to protect its most vulnerable. In this episode, we'll unravel the events that transformed Sowell from a decorated serviceman to a predator hiding in plain sight. We'll explore the lives he destroyed, the community left scarred, and the hard lessons learned in the wake of his horrifying acts. Stay with us as we uncover the chilling truth behind this case, a story that will leave you questioning how such evil can exist so close to home. In the heart of Cleveland, Ohio, nestled within its unassuming neighborhoods, lay a darkness that went unnoticed for years. This is the chilling tale of Anthony Sowell, a man who came to be known as the Cleveland Strangler. His name evokes terror, a reminder of the unspeakable horrors that lurked behind closed doors. The early 2000s saw Cleveland bustling with life, yet it was also a city grappling with its fair share of struggles. But nothing could have prepared its residents for the macabre discovery that would soon unravel. It all began with an odor. A foul stench, pungent and inescapable, clung to the air around Sowell's home on Imperial Avenue. Neighbors dismissed it as an issue with the local sausage factory or decaying wildlife. But as days turned to weeks, the smell persisted, growing stronger and harder to ignore. Finally, in October 2009, a routine police investigation into a sexual assault led officers to Sowell's doorstep. They entered his home expecting a standard inquiry, but what they found shook the city to its core. What lay within was a house of horrors, an unimaginable crime scene that would forever scar the collective memory of Cleveland. A story of lives stolen and voices silenced, hidden in plain sight for far too long. This is not just a story of a man's heinous crimes. It is a story of his victims, of systemic failures, and of a community forced to confront its darkest truths. Anthony Sowell was born on August 19, 1959, in Cleveland, Ohio. His early life was marred by hardship and instability. Growing up in a household ruled by strict discipline and limited resources, Sowell faced the harsh realities of a fractured family. His mother was known for her severe punishments, and the absence of a father figure only deepened the void in his formative years. By the time Sowell entered his teenage years, the seeds of a troubled future had already been sown. He exhibited signs of aggression and struggled to find a place within society. After dropping out of high school, Sowell joined the Marine Corps in 1978, seeking structure and purpose. For a time, the discipline of military life seemed to suit him. He rose through the ranks, even earning commendations. But beneath the surface, a darker side festered. After leaving the Marines in 1985, Sowell returned to Cleveland. Without the structure of military life, he spiraled downward, falling into alcoholism and drug addiction. His violent tendencies began to surface in chilling ways. In 1989, he was convicted of attempted rape, a crime that landed him in prison for 15 years. The details of that case painted a portrait of a man capable of extreme cruelty and control. Yet, despite this, Sowell would eventually be released. In 2005, Sowell re-entered society as a free man. His neighbors saw him as quiet, perhaps even reclusive. But behind the closed doors of his Imperial Avenue home, he was beginning a terrifying new chapter. Despite his criminal past, Sowell largely flew under the radar. He complied with parole requirements and avoided drawing attention. The system, overburdened and stretched thin, failed to notice the signs of escalating violence. For years, Sowell remained hidden in plain sight. His victims, often marginalized and overlooked by society, disappeared without raising alarms. The community, police, and even those close to him missed the growing pattern of horror unfolding within his home. By the time his crimes came to light, it was clear that his release had come at a devastating cost. It was a brisk October afternoon in 2009 when police arrived at 12,205 Imperial Avenue. The visit was meant to serve a simple arrest warrant related to a sexual assault complaint. But as officers stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with an overpowering stench, a mix of decay and neglect that clung to every surface. The team split up, searching the dilapidated rooms of Anthony Sowell's home. In the basement, they made their first gruesome discovery: a body wrapped in plastic, hidden beneath piles of trash. The silence that followed was deafening. One by one, more bodies began to emerge. In the backyard, shallow graves revealed skeletal remains. The upstairs crawl spaces and even closets contained the remains of women who had vanished, their disappearances unnoticed by most. Each discovery deepened the horror. The victims had been strangled, their lives taken with a chilling precision. Many bore the marks of prolonged suffering, trapped in a nightmare within those walls. The house was more than a crime scene. It was a tomb. Filthy mattresses, scattered drug paraphernalia, and piles of discarded belongings painted a grim picture of the lives stolen there. Neighbors, who had long complained of the odor, were in shock, grappling with the realization of the horrors occurring just next door. As the news broke, Cleveland was paralyzed by the scale of the tragedy. 11 women had been found, their stories cut short. For years, they had been invisible to the world, a haunting testament to the failures that allowed a predator to thrive undetected. Behind every name, behind every statistic, were real people with dreams, struggles, and lives intertwined with family and friends. The women Anthony Sowell targeted came from diverse backgrounds, but many shared common struggles: addiction, homelessness, and poverty. These challenges made them vulnerable, but they were far from defined by them. Take Tonya Carmichael, for instance. A mother of 3, she was known for her love of music and dancing. Her daughter, filled with grief, recalled the warmth of her hugs and the way her laughter could light up a room. Imelda Hunter, another victim, had a passion for cooking. Her family fondly remembered her experimenting with recipes, dreaming of one day owning a small restaurant. She had her struggles, but was working hard to rebuild her life. There was Michelle Mason, whose compassion for others knew no bounds. Despite facing her own hardships, she often volunteered at local shelters, helping those in even greater need. Each of these women had aspirations, stories, and loved ones who mourned their loss deeply. Family members and friends painted vivid pictures of their personalities, their quirks, talents, and the joy they brought to others' lives. But they were also victims of a society that often turns a blind eye to its most vulnerable. Their disappearances weren't met with the urgency they deserved, a painful reminder of systemic neglect. Today, their stories serve not only as a heartbreaking testament to lives cut short, but as a call to action, demanding that no one be overlooked, no matter their circumstances. The investigation into Anthony Sowell's crimes was an arduous process. Investigators meticulously pieced together evidence from his home, a treasure trove of forensic data. But the task was anything but simple. The conditions inside the house, combined with the passage of time, made gathering clear evidence a painstaking challenge. Key to the case were the testimonies of survivors who had narrowly escaped Sowell's grip. Their harrowing accounts painted a vivid picture of his methods, luring victims, exploiting their vulnerabilities, and subjecting them to unimaginable torment. Their bravery in recounting these experiences was instrumental in building a strong case. As the trial began in 2011, Sowell's demeanor in court was chilling. He sat stoically, showing little emotion as witnesses recounted the horrors he inflicted. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: DNA samples, autopsy reports, and witness testimonies. The defense, on the other hand, attempted to argue mental instability, but their efforts fell flat against the mountain of evidence. In July 2011, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty on 82 counts, including aggravated murder and rape. The judge handed down the ultimate sentence: death. However, following appeals and legal battles, this was later commuted to life imprisonment without parole. For the families of the victims, the trial offered some closure, but could never erase the pain of their loss. The conviction ensured Sowell would never walk free again, but the scars he left on the community remain. The discovery of Anthony Sowell's crimes sent shockwaves through Cleveland, leaving a community reeling from the magnitude of loss. The once quiet neighborhood on Imperial Avenue became a symbol of deep pain and reflection. Residents grappled with the trauma of living so close to such horror, struggling to reconcile how these crimes could unfold undetected for so long. The case exposed glaring systemic failures. Many of Sowell's victims were marginalized, their disappearances overlooked due to societal biases and a stretched law enforcement system. The issue of missing persons, especially among vulnerable communities, highlighted a disturbing pattern of neglect. In the wake of the trial, Cleveland vowed to do better. New protocols for handling missing persons cases were implemented, including faster response times and more rigorous follow-ups. Community outreach programs were established to build trust between law enforcement and residents, aiming to prevent such tragedies from happening again. The scars left by Sowell's crimes run deep, but they also spurred a collective call for change, one that continues to shape the city's commitment to justice and accountability. Following Anthony Sowell's conviction, the house on Imperial Avenue, where his horrific crimes were committed, became a painful symbol of tragedy for the Cleveland community. In 2011, the property was demolished to erase the physical reminder of the atrocities and to begin the healing process. This act was not just about demolishing a structure, it was a symbolic step toward reclaiming the neighborhood and honoring the victims whose lives were brutally cut short. Out of this devastation rose the Garden of 11 Angels, a memorial designed to honor Sowell's 11 victims. This serene space stands on the former site of Sowell's home and serves as a place of reflection, remembrance, and community gathering. Funded by local organizations and supported by the victims' families, the garden features beautifully landscaped areas, benches, and a black granite memorial with the names of the victims etched into its surface. It provides a quiet place where visitors can remember the lives lost and contemplate the systemic failures that allowed these crimes to persist for so long. The garden is more than a memorial. It symbolizes hope and resilience. For the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, once deeply scarred by these events, the space represents a fresh start and a commitment to preventing similar tragedies in the future. The Garden of 11 Angels now serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance, community support, and advocacy for the most vulnerable among us. As we reflect on the tragedy of Anthony Sowell's victims, we are reminded of the dangers of societal indifference. These women were more than their struggles. They were daughters, mothers, and friends. Yet many of their disappearances went unnoticed, their voices drowned out by the noise of a world too quick to look away. Their stories call on us to do better, not just in memory, but in action. Justice isn't only about punishment, it's about ensuring no one is invisible. Vigilance, empathy, and advocacy are our responsibilities. If this case gripped you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime.